Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is episode number 131 of the Audible Farm podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. I just got a shipment of Couchtown Coffee in, and I'll tell you what, it's some of the best coffee I've had to date. Why is that? It's because I can never choose whether or not I want medium roast or dark roast, and guess what? I got a blended roast this time. That's custom coffee. Made just for me. And they can make it just for you too. All you have to do is go to couchtowncoffee.com. They will roast coffee specifically for you and ship it to your house. That's hard to beat. The only way you can beat that is by entering the code word Audible Farm when you make a purchase, and they'll give you 20% off. That's not my doing. That's Couchtown's doing. So thank you very much, Couchtown, for supporting the podcast week after week. If you guys drink coffee in the morning, and I bet you do, you should probably make it Couchtown. Thanks, Couchtown. This episode is also brought to you by Broken Strings. Broken Strings is a not-for-profit organization started right here in Iowa with the goal of giving an instrument, a guitar, as a matter of fact, to a student in every school district. So there's going to be one guitar given in every school district to a student that might not otherwise be able to acquire one, or somebody that wants to learn how to play guitar, etc., etc. If you have any information that you want to, if you want to donate money, time, gear, or anything like that, hit up Broken Strings. The links are in the bottom. So just find Broken Strings on social media. Let them know that you may or may not want to make a monetary donation or a gear donation. Or if you want to, if you're in a band and you want to put on a show and donate the income from that show to Broken Strings, I guarantee you they would be more than happy to have that. So hit them up on social media. The links are down below. It's a great cause. And I got to say, I've been doing a little bit of work on the side for them, helping set up some guitars and things like that. And it's very rewarding. It makes me feel very good to do, and it's nice to see all these people donating their time, energy, and money to such a great cause and something I believe in. So thank you very much, Broken Strings. Check them out. All the links are down below. This week I'm sitting down with Harold Waits. Harold is the guitarist in Calous, as well as For You, and I've played with As For You a few times, and I've seen Calous a handful of times over the years. And it's this is one of those awesome interviews where the more I got to know Harold, the more I realized that he knows people I know, and he's been in bands with people I know, and he's been in bands with people I've interviewed. He's such a positive guy, and that's one of my favorite things about finding some of these people on the internet that are musicians. Is like we talk about a little bit in this episode, that sometimes you think, oh, this guy plays metal, he might be a little gruff, and then you find out like, oh no, Harold is not only harmless, he's one of the nicest people I've met in the music scene. So that's one of those things where you don't judge the book by its cover, and I love talking to people and getting to know them, and hopefully you guys do too, to realize that we're all musicians, we're all in this together, and we're all have the same struggles for the most part. So hats off to Harold. This episode's great. We talk about how long he's been playing music, where he came from, bands he's joined, bands he's been in, bands that music he's still making. It's insane. He's got two different recording sessions set up with two different bands with As For You and Calous. And so sometime in the next year, we're going to see some releases from those guys. So I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what new music comes out of that camp. And I'm also excited for you guys to listen to this interview. Because like I said, Harold's a great guy, and I think you guys will enjoy this as much as I did. So this is episode 131 with Harold Waits, guitarist for Calous and the band As For You.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, today I'm sitting down with Harold Waits. Harold, you and I have actually played a couple shows together. I'm in Three Finger Betty. You are in As For You, as well as Calous. And like I said, we played a show pre-COVID together, and then we played a show recently at Boggs for Boggs' birthday bash, which was
Boggs' birthday. Yep, dude, absolutely.
That was stellar fun time for that show. It was tons of fun, and it's one of those things. Every time I see you guys play live, it's when you see somebody the first time, sometimes it's not memorable. When you see them the second time, you're like, oh, I remember this. And it right. comes back and it like re-imprints itself on your brain. And that was one of the things I remember seeing you guys in As For You playing at the birthday bash. I was like, wait, I've seen these guys before. And then we were talking before the podcast. It was like, oh yeah, we played at Woody's together, and I started tying it all back together. I'm like, that's why. It's not just deja vu or some false memory.
Right.
So it's really cool to be able to tie all this back together and figure out who's who in the music scene. And we talked about it before the podcast started again, but like, thank you for like, coming up and saying hi after the show. It's some of that kind of stuff. It's not lost on me, the importance of that, musicians supporting one another. So
yeah, well, I just wanted to recognize you and shout out that I've been watching the podcast. So.
Dude, yeah. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I know that it's one of those things where it's like the podcast, you might not know everybody, but when you see someone you're like, oh, cool, I want to check this one out with this guy, or whatever. So
yeah, you just did one with Brad Hansen, and I was in a band with him, Bordeaux, and I played bass in that band while he was on guitar, and yeah, so it was weird. I saw that, and now I find myself I'm flipping back through all your episodes and watching all of them, find out who all I know and all that good stuff. But yeah.
That was actually something I thought was, Brad's from up north here, but he no longer lives here, but he spent time in the Des Moines music scene with you guys. And then I saw you comment on the YouTube video, and I was like, oh, how does he know these people? It's one of those things, small, it's a big, small music scene in Iowa,
Right.
So it's kind of crazy to see that these people tie in together. And that was like another thing was talking about this. You said you were in Calous, and that was another one of those like light bulb things where I was like, oh yeah, you're in Calous. I saw you at that Woody's show, and I mean I've seen Calous. Right. I remember watching Calous like 10 years ago when I used to go down there for shows and stuff like that. In what I would call in my it's like the Dark Mirror days when they were still romping around. I used to go to a lot of their shows, and you guys shared the stage a decent amount of times. Band. Yeah, I mean they came back, and I don't know if they're still back or not, but they did that one-off show last year. That was pretty cool to see them come back. So let's get down to it. How did you get involved in the music scene? In Iowa or anywhere? What was the first bands you joined?
Yeah, I moved here. I'm from Denver, and I moved here in '96. And I had been driving a semi. I ran all 48 states for a few years. And every time we came through Des Moines, I had a friend here, and I'd park my truck at the truck stop, and he'd take us to the fair and all the other stuff. And we'd say goodbye, and we'd go back out on the road. And my wife got tired of kind of riding around in the truck. She was with me for about a year, her and the dog. We put everything in storage and took her and the dog, and we had a big 74-inch condo for a truck, and we lived out of the truck for a year. We just ran the whole country, and it was amazing. But after about a year, she'd had about enough of that. So he's like, man, every time we stopped here in Des Moines, man, it was such cool people. It was laid back. I was tired of the Denver big cities bull crap, and so we decided to settle here, and that was in '96, and we haven't left since.
Oh wow!
I just got a local job running gas around here and soybean oil, just doing kind of like short runs. So I was home about every night, and then but then I got involved with some guys. I was always self-conscious. I never wanted to play in front of anybody. I sucked, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. And this one guy kind of got me going, and all of a sudden, I met some people. I was actually up at the Korn Family Values Tour in Omaha when I met my first singer. And about a month after that, we all kind of got together, and the band was called Nothing. And that was my first band, and we went for a couple years, and then from there, that kind of went south, and then I joined a band called Dome Shot and ran with that for a couple years. And then when that went astray, there was a spot open in Calous, and Joey Corlano had just joined that band as well. He'd been in the band for about a month. Joey drums for My Future Sin now. But he was in Smilin' Jack back in the old days. And when I was bebopping around in Nothing, he was bebopping around in Smilin' Jack. And he just said, hey, we're looking for another guitar player. And literally it had been about two or 3 days since Dome Shot had broken up. And I went over, and that was it. I was in Calous the whole time up until Norm left in 2012. So this good 20-year run.
Yeah, I got to touch back on you were talking about how you were a little bit self-conscious when it came down to playing music live.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I identify with that so much, and I just want to say I don't know if your talent has increased since you first started or what, but like, dude, you shouldn't be self-conscious. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, thanks. I'm trying to get better, but I did it backwards. I went in the military right out of high school, and so I didn't. When I joined nothing, I was in my 30s. I never even got serious with the guitar until I was in my mid 30s. So I did it backwards. Everybody's like, "Man, you're like 55 years old. What are you doing still playing in a metal band?" I'm like, I still love it. I'm not burned out. I got a late start on all this, and so I kind of did it backwards. I did the military thing first, and I'm a Air Force intelligence veteran, and I bebopped around the Air Force for a while doing that, and then it's just most people, like I said, I wasn't the 16-year-old that locked myself in his room for 16 hours a day practicing my sweeps and stuff like that.
Yep. See, I feel like our stories parallel each other a little bit. I played when I was younger, and then I just put the guitar down through literally the majority of my 20s, and I didn't pick it back up until I was like 28 or 9, and that's when I was like, all right, I got to figure out what I'm doing now,
Yeah, sounds like the same thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I was the same way you were when I first started figuring out what was going on. I was just like, I don't know if I'm really that good. I'd go around to jam nights and go watch shows and be like, man, these guys are so much better than I am. I don't know, And somebody finally was just like, just here's a guitar, just play some stuff, just some easy blues or whatever next to this, and it was like, all right, yeah, I think I can do this, and somebody built up the confidence enough for me to join another band, and I mean that's with the Three Finger Betty guys, and ever since then I've been off and running with it, just doing like little side projects with people or accompanying other folk musicians and things like that around the state, and it's fun, man. It's one of those things where I feel like having one of those buddies around that kind of helps you, push your confidence level is very important. Right. It's underestimated. I don't feel like there's enough people that do that, and if you can find a scene that'll help you with that, it's very important.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's just like once the first show we played was. It was a laser Battle of the Bands at Super Toad. I don't know if you ever been to Super Toad or not.
Nope, but I know the name.
Yeah, it's been torn down for years now, but there was a Battle of the Bands, and it was us, Painface, Shiloh Church, and Smack Dab. And that was the very first show I'd ever played. In that place, there was 800 to 1,000 people in there. It was just the craziest vibe I'd ever got. And when we got done playing, I was like, yeah, I can deal with this. I think I could deal with this for the rest of my life. And, and I never looked back from there on. I just always enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those other things. Once you get one of those experiences, it's nerve-wracking to play in front of that many people, especially some of your first shows and things. But like when it's all said and done, you're like, oh, this is worth it,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, recently I saw you guys with As For You, and like I said, I saw you guys with Calous last year, and then I've seen you guys with Calous, like I said, almost 10 years ago. It's been,
right.
And that's how long you've been with them, right? Or have you been with them since their inception?
Well, no, Norm and Ron started it back in like 94. Down in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, dang!
And then him and Ron had moved down there. They started Calous down there, but then ended up moving back here to Des Moines. And then they got some other players, and I met them through. Well, I was still in nothing. We were playing with them. We did a few shows with them, and that's how I got to know Norm and all them guys. So when I had gotten finished with all my other bands, and that spot was open in Calous. Seemed kind of natural for me to go there and jam with Norm. So, but yeah, that was, time frames now, probably 2004.
Wow. Gosh, I mean, there's a little bit of an age difference between us, but I was
Yeah.
probably, I didn't jump into the music scene down there until like 2007 or so when one of my buddies jumped in the music scene. Clint, the drummer for Dark Mirror and
Oh yeah, yeah,
Three
yeah.
Finger Betty. I grew up with him locally here. He was one of the guys when I was in high school and had a band. He was the drummer. So
Okay.
that's kind of how I got my into the scene was him jumping around and putting his name on the map down there. And then I kind of just buddied up with him. And there's,
Gotcha.
like we said, there's something to be said about having a buddy down there or having a friend or putting your name on the map somehow. You have to have somebody, because it's kind of just weird to answer those Craigslist ads or those Facebook ads where like, we're looking for a bassist. And it's like, well, I don't know any of these
Right.
people and I don't know if they'll like me or if our styles are going to
Right.
mesh or personalities or, so
Yeah.
it does help to have some friends down there. And that's another thing, like,
Sure.
you're playing in nothing and you're playing with other bands. And instead of, it's not like it's a thing all the time, but there's, like we talked about earlier, sometimes there's a little bit of competition between bands just based on the fact,
Yeah.
in Des Moines scene, there's hundreds of bands. So there's a lot of, it's not like we're elbowing each other trying to book gigs or anything, but there's
Right.
only so many places we can play. So if you can buddy up with people instead of being competitive with them, it helps out a
Sure.
lot, So, and people notice
We've
that.
always- Yeah, we've always been that kind of band. We don't. And back when I got started, when I was in Nothing days, and then even just after Nothing, man, there were some. I'm not gonna name names or anything, and but there was some. You can't be seen talking to that guy.
Yeah.
referring to me
Oh, wow.
because I was in a lesser band than them. And I was like, that's not me, man. We'll jam with anybody, anywhere, in your living room. We don't care. We have throughout our entire span of being in a band. We do free shows for charity all the time. I don't have enough hands to count how many free shows and merch and everything else that we've done for the community around here in Des Moines, from the homeless to the hungry to you name it.
Yeah, that
And
show.
I think
That show
that's how it should be.
that show we played at Woody's was actually a charity show for Toys for Tots. If you remember that, they had a place in the entryway, and it was literally a box, and your entry fee was donate a toy. And by the time
Right.
we went on stage, because I think we ended up headlining that show based on the fact that some people had some stuff to do, but that place, you almost couldn't even walk through the front door. There were so many toys in there by the end of it. I don't know
Right.
if you remember seeing that, but it was just like, dude,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to move these toys somewhere because people can't even haul gear in here anymore. It was so packed. It was like,
Yeah.
that was one of my first times ever seeing that much support for the scene down there, because it was just like, man, there's only, there were 6 bands I think on that show, but it was still just like, I
Right.
can't believe how many people came in, showed their support for the music, for the venue, for Toys for Tots and everything. Everyone was very supportive of one another. And it was really cool to see that. Like I said, it's really refreshing to see that was happening, because like we said, there's a lot of bands down there, and it's just one of those things where I feel like it parallels the music or the pro wrestling scene. I got involved with that. I'm not a wrestler at all, but I was a fan, and there's just so many pro wrestlers throughout the state that some people would work for less than others, and some people would get mad because, oh, this guy works for free, so the place booked him, and it's like, well, you just got to understand there's so many people down there, and that's just the way it works. When there's only X
Right.
amount of venues and this many people want to play the shows, it's just kind of the way it works out. So there's no reason to get mad at anyone for
Right.
getting a booking you didn't get or whatever. So, and that's probably
Right,
one of the
yeah.
most refreshing things to see, because everyone thinks, oh, metal band, these guys are going to be gruff, they're going to be raw and mean people, and you start to find out like, no, some of these metal guys are actually some of the nicest people out there. It's
Oh,
weird.
For sure.
I mean,
For sure.
like
But
go for it.
with that being said, for every band that likes to hate, there's 20 that are great. So
100%.
it's not a 50-50 thing down here like that. There's a few guys, and anymore I couldn't even tell you who they are at this point. Since nobody's been playing shows and everything, but.
I feel like it's going away. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
COVID made everybody realize, like, oh, there's only, You know, like there's only so many gigs to be had, and we have to support one another because, like, if you want someone to support you, you got to support them, and it's
Right.
there's definitely a tit for tat going. And I'm not going to be like, well, you know, it's because of good people like us that the scene is turning around. I feel like everyone is making the choices themselves to really support one another, and it's really
Yeah.
neat to see it kind of go that way. And like I said, you've been down in the Des Moines music scene longer than I have, so I'm sure you've seen it accordion back and forth a few different times. Beforehand, we were talking about how, oh, there used to be like 100 bands in Des Moines, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, now there's only like 20, and then all of a sudden a whole new crop of musicians shows up, and it's back to 100 bands in Des Moines, you know? And
Yep.
I mean, that's something. I feel like that's gotta change your mindset on a lot of things compared to if it was like I'm just throwing out another area, like I mean, we talked Nashville or whatever. There's a bazillion bands in Nashville, so it's a lot more competitive down there. But I feel like you probably have a little bit, you know, maybe better head on your shoulders, having seen the music scene change down there a bunch and still being active in it the whole time.
Yeah. I never went away. It's just, I've seen the different waves, you know, like the first show I ever saw here in Des Moines when me and Laura first just got off the road. I dropped her off in June of '96, and I finished off my runs for the next month and turned my truck in and everything. I was working out of Cheyenne, Wyoming at the time. And so in July of '96, when I actually came here, was here for a couple weeks, right? And I was like, we need to find a bar. We need to find a place to go. So we opened up the phone book, and we looked at nightclubs. And all of a sudden we're like, Safari Club. So it was like, let's go check that out. And Slipknot was playing. But this was back when Anders was still singing.
Oh, wow.
So a whole different lineup and everything. And so Anders was there. You know, he had his face all taped up in electrical tape. And this is Josh Brainerd, obviously, was still in the band. And so that was the first show I ever seen here in Des Moines, was Slipknot at Safari.
Holy cow. Dude,
Before Corey.
You want to talk about throwing a dart at the dartboard and hitting it perfect. Like, that's insane that you got to see that. Yeah,
it's crazy. But I've been through the whole Safari, then Harry Mary's, that whole thing, you know, and it was awesome, man. I got videotape all the way back to then. I've been talking to Laura. I probably need to turn these tapes over to somebody and have them transferred digitally.
Dude, that would that would be awesome. I bet you got some crazy stuff on there.
I do. I got some stuff.
Oh,
I can make a documentary with all the videos I have. I should probably think about doing that.
Dude, that would be so cool. I would be all about that because like I said, I've only been in the scene for like 5 years, in the music scene at all, anywhere in Iowa. You know, this podcast is only a couple years old, and like I said, I've talked to a lot of people, but I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of all the cool musicians in Iowa. You know? Oh
yeah, and everything that I have, you can imagine with even going back to like Josh Brainerd or any of them old school dudes. I'm gonna have to. I got a buddy of mine that does that conversion thing. He was a customer of mine at Guitar Center. You kind of like the legacy box thing, where you send them your videos and your photos, and they put everything onto a CD for you. I should do that and start editing a little documentary.
Dude, if you ever get anywhere near scratching the surface of that, I'm having you back on to talk about it because that sounds amazing.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Well, first of all, it would be a Herculean task. I got so much stuff, it's not even funny. Stuff I haven't even seen in a decade. And I literally have our first performance at Super Toad. Shiloh Church let us borrow their camera to record our last song of our set. So they would still have enough tape on to record their set. So they let us, and I went to Walmart and bought a tape, popped it in their recorder. We taped our last song, and then that was it. And so I do have my very first performance on tape back in 97, 98.
The coolest part about that is I'm sure there's people listening to this that are just like, what are you talking about? Got to buy a tape and save space and like all this other stuff.
Well, yeah.
Anymore, you can just pull your phone out and it's like, oh, look, I have full HD 4K quality video. The audio anymore on phones is actually almost passable enough to just pull your phone out, record something, and it sounds good.
Absolutely.
If you've got a phone that's within the last year or two, a lot of times they'll have the ability to compress down the audio, so it's not all like, like. So it's really neat to have that. I mean, that's actually how I started. Was the whole fact. I'm sorry for redlining everybody's audio there, but I mean that's one of the things I started doing. That's like with Audible Farm. It was like there's a lot of bands out there that have no video of them playing and don't have like any studio recordings or anything. So that's what I started doing, was just video recording bands. So it's like, well, at least you have a live set with semi-decent audio to go with something. And I used to just record it and give it away to people. And then the bad part about that was I found out I was recording a lot of stuff and people would never upload it online, and they'd be like, well, I don't know how, or things like that. And it was like, well, I'll just start a YouTube channel, and with your permission, I'll just toss it all in there, throw all the links to your stuff below, and then that'll be that, So I did that for a bunch of bands too. And that's actually how I started with this podcast. It was just one of those things where I thought there's too many good bands out there not to be recognized, especially some of them that might not have the capital or the income or the revenue streams to record an album, properly or at all, even, or even make a demo. So if I could help out in any way, that was like the best way I figured I could help out. And I mean, if anybody's looking for it, you can go to
it's awesome.
If anybody's looking for any video and stuff, I haven't done too much lately, just because everyone's got a baller phone now, so it's like, you can do it yourself if you really want to. But I also underestimate that, because I try to help people with their YouTube channels and things like that, to try to beef them up and make them look better and make it easier for people to traverse them, And I recently helped a guy clean up his YouTube channel, and he's gotten quite a few extra views just from cleaning it up. So it's one of those weird things where it's like, if you make it just look kind of sort of professional, people they'll take notice. And I mean, that's one of the things. And as for you guys, that I think is one of the most striking things is, if people blindly went and saw you, then looked at your merch table, they'd think, dude, are you guys going to be in Kansas City next weekend? This stuff is awesome. Like your shirts, your merch. I mean, you've got everything: stickers, banners. I mean, you've got it all in that band. And some of that you have to tip the cap to Harpo for that.
All of it. Yeah, he does all that stuff. He's got his own company, Corrosive Company, screen printing. Yep. So yeah, it's a blessing to definitely have somebody like that in a band, for sure. Look at Dead Horse Trauma; they did all their stuff in house too, with the octopus printing, and it's do it yourself. I mean, do it yourself kind of bands really took off, man. Right after getting signed to a label was in itself was a Herculean task. I mean, Slipknot did it. But that's Slipknot, You still got the rest of us here.
Yep.
And we're not rich. We don't have tour support. We don't have none of that crap. We got 9-to-5 jobs. Yep. We got a family. We got bills to pay. And then you got to go on the road. Yeah. And usually play for gas money. And and that's where Harpo and the merch comes in, because that offset some of the crappy pay you got. You could literally sell more merch than you would ever get paid for the gig. So
yes. So if any bands are listening to this, I 100% say you should have merch. I will say Harpo makes the merch for me for Audible Farm. He makes our shirts and our hoodies. And he makes Three Finger Betty's shirts. Our latest shirt run, he made those. I'm all in. Like, it's one of those things. He was one of the first people I found that had a screen printing company that made stuff like that. So I just hit him up, and ever since then we've kind of buddied up, and it's really fun too, because he's willing to work with me. I mean, I had a weird shirt order where it was like, I want a dark gray shirt with a black logo, and it's like, he's like, that might not work very well, and I was like, well, just print one and see what it looks like for me, and he did. I don't know anybody that's willing to do that, just to like one-off a shirt just to see what it looks like. And it actually looked good enough that he was like, this doesn't look bad actually, And I was like, sweet, let's run a set of prints for it. And I mean, hats off to him for doing that. And I mean, once again, hats off to you guys for having the wherewithal to have a merch table. Cause like you said, the pay is not always good, and you can't always put that onus on the venue either. I mean, how do you expect,
Right.
we've all seen in COVID times, it's nearly impossible to run a business. You know, the margins are so slim, and you can't just be like, pay us $500 for the show. It's like, that's not how it works. You know, like,
Right.
you know, sometimes we work for a percentage of bars. Sometimes we work for a percentage of the door. Sometimes you work for a flat fee, and it's a small flat fee, and you're just hoping and praying that someone's going to buy a shirt afterwards. And once again, it comes down to having a nice, you know, set of merch to offer people. Because if you don't, when people come up to you and they're like, what kind of merch do you have? And you're just like, we don't, it's kind of embarrassing. And then you also realize, I just lost out on $10, you know?
Sure.
I mean, that was when Unity reformed and I joined up with them for a while. That was something that we didn't have any merch, and we played a handful of shows, and we had a lot of people asking us about merch, and we just didn't have any. And it ended up being a big downer because we'd go places to like over in Chicago and things like that and play shows. And then it was just like, well, sorry, we don't have merch. You know, we don't even have a CD. We don't have demos, nothing, you know, and it's sad, but it's just the way it goes.
Well, it can definitely make or break a trip, you know, for sure.
Bingo. Yeah. I mean, even if it's not like, you know, it's not just for us or just for the fans, but sometimes it comes like, right, like you said, offset the gas money to go to a show and make or break the trip. You know, it could end up being everyone spent $50 in gas to get to a show, or now we all have our gas money recouped at least, you know, so.
Yeah. And maybe a meal for the whole band or something, you know, we go out and, you know, pay for everybody's pizza or whatever, wherever we're eating, burgers, whatever.
Yeah, 100%. I even found that starting like go for it.
Yeah, I was just saying, and then by the time you get home, you know, you haven't lost any money, and you still might have a few extra bucks, you know.
And
definitely,
dude, I'm with that too, because I mean, if there's something that grinds on bands, it's the fact that everybody wants to play shows, and a lot of us are willing to, and I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, a lot of us are willing to kind of maybe lose money doing it because that's how much we love it, but we don't want to lose money doing it.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely.
So anything
would be nice. Yeah, if we could all get $1,000 a show, you know, it'd be great. You know?
But I mean, then you have to draw $1,000 worth of drinks at the bar, or charge at the door. I mean, it's tough, but like you know,
yeah, absolutely.
Having that merch helps out. I mean, even recently with Three Finger Betty, we set up a Bandcamp page. We overhauled the one that we actually had, and we set up the merch thing on the Bandcamp page. And I mean, Bandcamp takes a small fee, whatever. It's easier than setting it up on a lot of other places. It just for simplicity, it works. But we realized setting up a Bandcamp merch page actually helped out. People are buying shirts off of there when we couldn't play shows during COVID. And that was one of the most mind-blowing things, was like, oh, people are still willing to support us even though we can't play shows. You know, we put out an album mid-COVID and couldn't even play a show to support it.
Right.
And people were still willing to go there to check that out. And I mean, I couldn't find like an online merch thing for As For You, but
no, we don't.
You know,
not yet.
When we revamp, when we get the new, the weirdest thing just happened. We just all the new music we were gonna put up on, iTunes, Spotify, and Harpo got all that going, and they came back and said something about the name of the band. There's a problem with the name of the band. It's too simplistic or something. So so it's kind of on hold right now. Like as far as like going live on, as far as digitally, and I'm like, what do you mean it's too simplistic?
Yeah, I guess I don't.
I mean, you got bands called Rush.
Yeah.
You got bands called,
or bands who just singer-songwriters who use their name, and then there's like 50 other people with the exact same name, and like how do you let that go through and not? So
So there's a little snafu right now, but as soon as we get that, we'll work around that, and then it'll be available on iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff. And then when we get our YouTube page revamped, get all the new music and even all the old music up there. And in my YouTube, my personal YouTube is Harold Waits. So if you go there, I got all the new lyric videos for As For You and Calous. And I got a bunch of live stuff from back when we were a Jaeger band, when we were on tour with Korn and Buck Cherry and, Uproar Fest and all them videos there. And that's all on my personal YouTube site, but eventually we're going to transfer all of them over to the appropriate band site, either As For You or Calous.
That's awesome. And that's one of those things. It takes a lot of doing to get this stuff all organized and put in the right spots. And I'm sure you're this just as well as I do. It's like if you have 50 different places that have all your music, sometimes it's tough to corral all the stats and be like, where's everybody listening? Yeah. And like, you should probably just go to Spotify and listen on Spotify. Well, I don't have Spotify. I got Apple Music. And it's like, well, I mean, it's on YouTube for free. It's like, well, I don't like ads. And then it's like, well, it's on Reverb Nation, and then people, it's just one of those things where, I mean, and nothing against Reverb Nation, but I feel like that's losing popularity over the last handful of years compared to a lot of other sites. So
I agree with that. Yeah.
So that's another thing where a lot of people put a lot of their energy into Reverb Nation. And it's like, well, now it's kind of going away. And now you have to like shift gears and go back into something else,
Right. You just gotta keep moving with the times and the platforms, and as one becomes more popular, you go there, and then all of a sudden it becomes MySpace, and then you go from MySpace to Twitter or Facebook, and it all changes. So you just got to kind of roll with it.
Yeah, I am gonna let out this little secret here. So if you use like DistroKid or I guess what are the other ones? TuneCore, any of those places, and you upload your music, they'll push it onto YouTube Music for you. So YouTube Music is like different than YouTube itself, but the stuff that's on YouTube Music also gets pushed onto YouTube. So if you don't have YouTube Music, you can watch it on YouTube, and they just pop an ad in front of it, and that actually adds to your revenue on whatever distribution service you use. So I'm just going to use DistroKid as the example. But if you upload your stuff on DistroKid, and let's say you put like your EP online or a single or something like that, they'll push it onto YouTube, and they'll put it on, and I'm just going to use As For You as an example, but they would put it on like As For You topic. And it's like a thing that DistroKid owns the stuff that you're putting on there, but they're taking everything, all the revenue you would get, and giving it to you on the side. So you can go online and look for As For You topic, and you will find like, oh, our EP is right here, and there's ads in front of it, and I get revenue. And what you want to do with that is put that onto your YouTube channel in a playlist, and then people will see that instead of uploading. Like, you can make a video yourself and upload it with the music in the background, but if you push that onto your YouTube channel, people will see that, and it'll actually garnish you some revenue, whether it's a penny every view or whatever, but it's still worth it.
Right.
And that's something I learned in the last year, and I started teaching some people that, and people are like, I've noticed I got 23 extra cents this month that I wouldn't have ever gotten. And it's like, hey, I mean, it's only 23 cents, but or whatever. One guy ended up with like $4 out of the whole ordeal, and I was like, that's pretty cool that you have the ability to do that kind of stuff. So anything to offset the cost, even of putting it online, because putting your music online is not free. It costs you money every single year, and it's one of those things that people also take for granted. Where I love it when people are like, how come your stuff's not on Spotify? It's like, because it costs money, and and Spotify pays like 1/8 of a tenth of a quarter of a percent of 1 penny every time somebody listens to it or whatever it is. So, but if anybody's looking for,
you'll be happy.
Yes. Exactly, and I hate that, but it's just the way that's another thing. It's just the way the music scene's going. It's tougher to make the money anymore. So once again, merch is important, or figuring out those little tips or tricks that you can have to gain any extra revenue. So if anybody's listening to this, that's like my secret weapon. There are also some distribution sites like I know DistroKid will allow you to actually just blend your YouTube channel straight into your YouTube Music channel, so it will automatically just port things between the two of them. And that was something I did with Three Finger Betty just to try. And so if anybody's listening to this, dink around on your distribution site, or find out a way to make a playlist on your actual YouTube channel using those quote unquote topic channels, and that'll garnish you some revenue. So there's the big secret for the week. If anybody wants to try and learn something, there's always little tips and tricks that come out of these, and sometimes they're from me and sometimes they're from the guests, but that's That's the one I figured out anyways. So
There you go.
otherwise, if anybody's looking for any of the As For You information, I'm going to put it in the description section down below. And there's also going to be Calous information down below. So that's the easiest thing. If you don't want to search for it, you don't have to. Just scroll to the description section wherever you're listening. It'll be down there. So, I mean, that's one of my other things I like to try to do is make it as easy as possible for people to find the music if they want to find the music. So it's there.
Yeah.
So another thing I'd like to talk about with you is gear. Without playing our hands too much, let's just say you've got a different choice of gear than most people would choose. You use it's not like it's like, oh, I use weird baritone guitars and goofy foreign amps or anything like that, but you use some nice stuff, and I myself find myself using nice things as well. And there's nothing against people who can't afford nice things, but it's one of those things that weirdo gearheads like you and me notice that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever got you started in that, did you ever like at one point in time just like, I'm gonna start chasing that quote unquote perfect tone, or what was it?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, the first rig I played when I was in nothing was a Crown power amp, a Crown 2000 that pushed a Digitech 2120 effects processor, and I ran that forever, and it was crap. But I was just happy it made some kind of distortion.
Yeah,
and then and then from there, just like, you play with other bands and you look at their gear and you're like, you talk to them about their guitar and about their amp and everything, and find out how much things cost. And then you find out, the guitar you're playing on, it was so cheap. And then you finally get a good guitar in your hands, a good, well-built guitar. And it really is it's a night and day difference in how it plays and how easy it is for you to play. I would struggle with certain things on it was a Jackson, but it was a real lower line Jackson. And when I first got my first Paul Reed Smith, it's just the weirdest thing. I'm like, okay, I didn't just wake up and become a better guitar player,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, what's going on here? And it was just so easy to play, and it was so comfortable to play. I wasn't fighting it anymore. I was fighting that Jackson constantly. And this one, there was no fight. Like the fight was gone. And it was just like easy.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. And once I got that, I've been a PRS guy ever since. And
you described it beautifully, dude.
Yeah, that's what it was. You think a guitar is a guitar, and it kind of is, but when you're first learning and things are hard anyway, it's and then you get into something a little bit higher end with a little bit better quality, a little better action, a little bit better feel. It really is night and day, and I've just never gone away from them. I've had several now, and I have an ESP. Horizon LTD that I love. Played it forever in Calous when I was in between my PRSs,
Dude,
yeah.
Isn't that one of those weird like double-edged swords? Like when you're beginning, there's no sense in buying a $500+ instrument. You just go for the cheapo $100, $200 instrument. Yeah. But it's that weird double-edged sword where it's like it's going to make learning harder. But it's also kind of like if you learn on something that's tougher to play, when you finally get something nice in your hands, you're like, oh, baby. Like you said, it's like I didn't become better overnight. It just became easier to play somehow. I don't know,
Right.
And one of my things realizing that was going to jam nights, and sometimes you have to share gear at jam nights because it's like not everyone's going to bring their own guitar or their own amp or whatever. And I'd pick up someone else's, like, I'm just going to throw out an example, but I played like a GNL, like a strat copy, and I was just like, holy cow, this thing plays nice, and it was like, it was one of the higher end GNLs, and I was just like, geez, the notes just fall out of this thing. I'm not fighting it at all, and it's not even my preferred style of guitar. I'm like a Les Paul humbucker guy, and this thing had some Z coils, single coils type things in it, and I was like, I can't believe how nicely this thing plays and
Right.
how easy it is to play. And that's when I started just kind of being like, okay, I gotta change what I'm doing here a little bit. I can no longer buy these like $150 used Epiphone, entry level Les Paul, Les Paul 100s with bolt on necks and.
Right.
But the beauty of it is that's actually what I bring with to Three Finger Betty shows is an old cheap guitar that I rebuilt. Nothing against Betty, but I'm not doing anything super technical in Three Finger Betty, so I don't need a shredder guitar or anything. I'm playing a lot of power chords and background stuff, so I can get away with it a little bit better there. But if I go to jam nights now, it's like I'm bringing a nicer guitar to a jam night, and so that's usually what I kind of go for. But dude, you hit the nail right on the head. It's weird that you just like pick this thing up and you're just like, wow, like you said,
it's like
you didn't get better, but it's easier, and that just makes all the difference.
Yeah, it really is that subtle, that and little things like that can really. And I was excited when I was like, oh my god, and it just kind of gave me a new spark. It's like, what have I been missing? So, and then I started getting amps. I had this Marshall. It was a TSL, a triple super lead that I had just bought. It was my first real tube amp that I've been using for bands. And but then a friend of mine, Eric Messenbrink, at the time he was in a band called Boojum, and he had this VHT. He just bought it, and he had a modded out Soldano that he always played and always loved. And I think he's even still playing it now to this day. But he didn't want the VHT anymore. And I'd been over at a couple of their practices watching him jam, and I just couldn't believe how he was playing it on a PRS. And I just could not believe how full and meaty and perfect the tone was. And he said he was selling it. I was like, okay. So I sold my Marshall to Blake, who was the other guitar player in Dome Shot with me at the time. And I took that money and bought Eric's VHT. And that's the one you saw on stage the other night. I've gotten rid of it. It's a 50 watt straight up. It's got an EQ on it. And that's a huge thing on them VHTs. They have some without the EQ and they don't sound quite right. But the one I got, it's my tone. It's what I've been looking for. That coupled with my guitar, I don't use. I have a delay pedal. I have a carbon copy delay pedal. It's the only effects I use, and I love it. It's what I've been looking for, and I haven't found anything better. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those other fun things. Once you start searching through some gear and you find what you like, and then you're just like, oh, this is my lane or whatever, and like. Once again, we're not downing on cheap gear. You said you ran the Digitech through a Crown power amp. I used to just be like, these Digitechs are no good and dirkety dirk. And then I actually went and saw a really awesome musician, Travis Larson. He's a guitarist. He plays kind of instrumental stuff, but he had a Digitech pedal on his board, and I just walked up and was like, "Do you even use that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's on about half the time." And it's like. So there are ways to make these things sound good. It's not like they're garbage, Exactly. This guy's a world touring musician, and he's got a Digitech like $50 pedal on his board, and it works. Yeah. And if you can find a way to make the gear you have work for you, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm super intrigued by that stuff.
That was my journey. That was my search, and then I got that EVH 212 I've been playing through. It's just the perfect sound for me, Everybody's different. Everybody's looking for a different tone. Mm-hmm. Depends on the band you're in, the type of music, the genre of music you're playing. Yeah. For what I'm doing right now, it's perfect for me. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring my PV-JSX with 2 overdrives stacked in front of it to a jam night to play some folk music, I'm bringing a little tweed 1x12 thing, and that's like, you kind of sort of have to have the right gear for the thing. It's like, you could probably eat using a shovel, but it's a little bit easier to use a fork or a spoon, so.
Sure.
But that's one of the fun things. I feel like there's some people that do go through that quest for tone or try to find that next piece of gear that's really gonna help them out or whatever. And I mean, I'm no different than anyone else. I like kind of digging through gear, and I'm not shying away from buying a piece of gear, trying it out for a year, and then selling it off to one of my buddies. Especially if I can find something for a deal, and I used it for a while. it's worth, selling it to somebody else for a good deal just to be like, well, I don't know, I ended up losing 20 or 30 bucks on this in the whole long run of things, but at the same time, it was worth it to just try this stuff out for a year. It's almost like I rented an amp for like 50 bucks for a whole year, and then I can sell it off.
Right.
So it's really not like you're like, oh, I bought all this stuff and now I got to keep it forever, or I can never sell it, or I always strayed away from going to pawn shops and stuff like that to sell it, because I always figured there's a buddy of mine that's looking for an upgrade. Somebody's always looking for an upgrade. So if anybody's looking to do the whole shape your tone thing, don't stray away. Just give it a shot. You never know.
Hey, it's the great experiment. That's music, right?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Marshall TSL. I've always wanted to try one. I've always looked. Yeah, I've always looked for one. It's I'm a big fan of 3-channel amps. I mean, like a huge fan of 3-channel amps, and that's right in my alley, And
yeah,
I really wanted to try that one out, and I just haven't found a good used price on one locally. I'm not big on buying stuff and having them ship it. I've unfortunately had people ship stuff and it gets wrecked, and then you have to fight with insurance and the post office and eBay and the seller and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an eBay nightmare with my last PRS that I sold, and I won't use eBay anymore.
No, they don't like to side with the seller, unfortunately.
Isn't that crazy?
It's mind blowing.
It's so crazy. I sold my PRS to a guy in New York, and because it was over $1,000, they put a hold on the money. And until the guy that bought it gave a review, like a positive review of everything, they were going to hold my money. Well, the guy gave a positive review, and they were still holding my money. And all of a sudden, like 30 days went by, and I'm going, okay, what's going on? And they're like, I'm like, well, this guy's running around New York with my guitar playing gigs, and you guys still are just holding on to the money. Where's my money? And it turned into a big, long, drawn-out fiasco thing.
Yeah,
like, that's...
You shouldn't have to get a lawyer to sell a guitar online,
Exactly.
Good Lord.
Well, I learned my lesson, so.
Yeah, I know people who have done the same thing. They sell stuff online, and the seller, I mean, like, the seller is at the beck and call of not only eBay, but the person who buys it. And that's not a good way to run a business. And I mean, there's a lot of people that are turning their nose up at eBay and the way they charge fees and things like that. Or like I said, the way they pay you out, like it's pretty junko to do it that way too. Like, oh, we're going to hold the money until they leave a positive review. Like, what? That's like, why don't you just give me the money and then we'll figure it out later, and they can make a claim if there's an issue. That seems to be the right way to do it if I was going to run a business. But hey, I'm not running a multi-billion-dollar business, so I guess whatever.
You're not a crook.
Oh gosh, no. So. And that's the other thing is, like, I have sold gear to people before, and I try and test all my gear out, but in the off chance I don't test it out beforehand, I sell it, and someone says this doesn't work, I always pay them to return it. I'm getting a lot of feedback here. Give me just a second. I'm going to dink with some stuff.
Sure.
Do. All right, there we go. I don't know what the deal with that was. I'm sure everyone heard it in the audio, but there was a big swell. I don't know. There's a storm coming, so maybe that's kind of dinking with some of my stuff here. But it wasn't on your end. It's on my end. So
it might have been. Wow, my dog just shook her head. And her ears were flapping. So maybe that's what they're... She's a Great Dane, so she's got a big flap.
I don't know what it is here. It's I could just have some issues with one of my cords here or something. Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna keep going here. We're already getting close to an hour, but I wish I could figure out what that was. It was weird. It sounded like some electronic stuff was kind of junking out on me, which makes me worry because replacing gear sucks, and I don't know. But anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, that was one of my other things I want to say is like, just having you come up, say hi to me at a show is one of the coolest things ever. And then to realize that people I know, and then it was just like, dude, I got to get in touch with this guy and see what he's all about, because even though we've run into each other at shows, it's not like you and I are best buddies, playing shows together. And, we say hi in passing, but some of these conversations.
we're definitely acquaintances.
Yes, yes. And I mean, it's not like we're sour or anything with each other. We just
Yeah,
haven't sat down and talked. There's not always enough time at shows to
yeah,
sit down and talk, especially
absolutely.
if you guys just got done playing and then you got a whole bunch of people that want to talk to you after you just got done playing
Yeah,
and you're trying to haul gear and I'm trying to put my
yeah,
stuff on stage. It's like
yeah,
I love the analogy of it's like two ships passing in the night. You're just kind of like toot toot and then that's
yeah.
yep.
Wave and say,
Yeah, but it's just so weird that it's a big, small music scene in Iowa. Everyone sort of is kind of attached to every other band somehow, whether through past members or going to shows or sharing the stage with somebody or sharing venues and things like that. So, it's nice to find positive people. Not everyone's always that positive in the music scene either, and
no,
it's just the way it is. You're going to run into that in the professional world. You're going to run into that everywhere. It's
yep,
just the way it works, and it's really nice to run into other positive people like you, and to go to shows
sure,
like we were at that show for Boggs Whole Avenue, the Boggs' birthday bash, and there were guys from like Blacked Out World there, and they weren't even on the show, and I was
yeah,
just like,
yep,
yeah, this is so cool. Everyone's supporting each other, and
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
It's a great crowd, and yeah, it was a great crowd.
Dude, I love it. I just absolutely love it, and I don't ever see myself jumping out of the music scene, even if there are some trials and tribulations here and there. It's I like playing
Right.
music, and like you said, I'm we're willing to play music at different places for different amounts of money or even for charity. I mean, that's one of the most mind blowing things about you guys is just how many charity shows you've played for different people, and that just goes to
Yeah,
show how we actually care about our community.
yeah. That's what it should be about. That's what we are. We're um, it's extended family. When we're on the road, we spend more times with each other than we do our family, and and then we get out into the scene, the club scene, whether it be lefties or bogs or anything else. It's just like a chance to get together and catch up with friends, and especially during now in these times when we haven't really been around each other much. Um, it just it really is a community, and it's important to give back,
Mm-hmm.
and help people that need help. That's all. That's what it's about. Just being a good person. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah. And I mean, that's the other thing is like I used to just be like, I can't believe these guys didn't come to our show or whatever. But it's like you also got to understand, like you said, people have 9 to 5s. They have not only a day job but a family. They might be in one band. They might be in two bands. They might be in three
Right.
bands. Maybe they got a show that night. Maybe they have band practice that night. Bands have to practice sometime, So. I
Yeah.
I quickly learned to not get mad at people for not showing up to shows because like there's a lot of Friday shows up north here that I miss because I go down south to Des Moines area to practice
Yeah.
with Three Finger Betty, and it sucks. But everybody up here understands that, like I'm splitting my time between two different scenes, and
Yeah.
I'm doing the
Yeah.
best I can to support things, And I've even driven down to Des Moines to go see shows on nights where like I don't have anything going on up here because I just like going to watch music and I like hanging out with people, and
Yeah.
I think some of that comes maybe from like when you started out, you said that you had not self-confidence issues, but you just didn't really know if you fit in or whatever, if you were good enough. And I think that's
Right.
some of what makes maybe people like you and I very supportive of other people. I always use the analogy of other people write music and I would have never thought of it. And that's some of the coolest things that I think about music. I used to turn my nose up at it, but then it was just like, this is like an artist painting something I would have never thought of.
Right.
And it'd be dumb to have another artist be like, I don't like that doodle you made, like, so
Right.
why not support one another? And
Well, you're either lifting people up or you're pushing people down, and I prefer to lift people up.
yeah, I mean, wouldn't you rather have somebody help lift you up too, So,
Exactly.
oh man,
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
it's cool to run into positive people in the music scene. Not that there's piles of negative people, but like we said
Right.
earlier, that 1 in 50 or 1 in 20 negative people that you might run into, it's kind of just like,
Yep.
And then you
You
realize
just
I'm not going to be
yeah.
like that.
Ignore them and move on,
Boom.
because they're just going to drag you down. And like I said, I'd rather be with people like you and
just positive people to where I don't have to worry about that negative anything. It's like we're all there, we're all like-minded, we're all friends. I mean, I've got friends, in this scene for decades now, and they're the salt of the earth, and all they do is lift people up, so that's who I hang around with.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite parts, and I'm just going to throw Boggs out as like a venue, but like every time I go to Boggs and play a show there, the support that is seen not only from the venue but from the other bands we play with there is amazing. I don't know if he's figured out which bands are going to support one another or what, or if he's booking the shows purposefully in that manner, but every time I go there, it is a wonderfully fun time to enjoy music and be around people who are supportive. So
absolutely, that's why we keep going back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Some people might be like, I need a bigger venue with a bigger stage and more lights and derpity derp. But if there's
maybe whatever.
Yeah, but there's lefties if you want that. I mean, there's places to play. No matter what skill level, no matter what genre you're playing, no matter what preferences you have, any of that stuff. I mean, one of my other favorite things is, I'm sure you know this, but like it's. You can work with a lot of venue owners for the cost. Different places have different pay structures, so it just depends on what pay structure works best for you at what venue, and you can find those things too. So if you play somewhere and it's like, well, we didn't get paid much here, well, like, ask them if they can pay you differently. Pay a percentage of the bar, or charge at the door and take a percentage of the door or something. And figure out what works best for you. I understand, like, it's easy to get downtrodden in the music scene and think that, it's not worth it to do what you're doing, but it is, and
well, I mean, to some people it's not, and that's fine. Then don't do it.
Yeah.
A lot of these bands won't play places like Boggs' whole avenue. I don't know if they think they're too big for it, but
I think some bands might just be, the way they're set up might need a sound guy, and Boggs is a run your own sound place.
That's a great point. And
it's not like they're better or worse or whatever. It's just a different thing, They just need something different that's not necessarily offered there. But I've never been one to think that like a Three Finger Buddy has to have a sound guy to sound good. It's like, no, we can make ourselves sound good on any stage, and it's nice to not have a sound, guy, because it almost feels like you're more in control. But it's also really nice to have a sound guy, because it's just like, I'm putting this in your hands, and you're going to make it sound awesome, and I don't have to do a damn thing to make it sound good. You're going to do it all, and that's
right.
And so, I don't know. That's one of my favorite things I think about, like talking to you before the podcast and running into you at shows. I realize that you and I are kind of like-minded in that sense, where we're not going to turn our nose up at different scenarios, different bands, and we're generally supportive people, and it's weird how parallel you and I have as far as like starting late, liking different gear than most people use, and being so open-minded about a lot of this. And hats off to you for being 20 plus years in the music scene and not giving up, not souring off, or not just disappearing altogether. Because there's some people that do that too. They just go away, and it's like, where did that band go? And they just poof, vanished.
Yeah, I mean, as for you, we've been through some lots of stuff. With Brian, I don't know if you have been following over the years, Brian's and Christy's situation going on with the kids, and we just had some real tragedy happen as a band, and Brian and Christy, it was hard, it was rough, and the fact that we're even still a band is kind of amazing. But I think that says something right there. We've been through hell and back, and then back to hell again, and now we're back, and we're still here, and we're still kicking out new tunes, and we're loving it. Life is good now. We've gotten through all the rocky stuff, and it's still at it. I guess still plugging away. I guess it's meant to be, or I wouldn't still be doing it.
Yeah, like you said, it's almost like your band is an extended family. I'll
Absolutely.
speak. I'll speak.
Absolutely.
I'll speak candidly here. Like with the guys in Three Finger Betty, I had some personal issues I needed to discuss with somebody, and I sat down with those guys and discussed it with them, and they were all very receptive about it. And I just thought to myself, man, it's nice to have people here who are not only my friends, but like really, really look after me and care about me, you know, and it's nice to have those people around. And if you can surround yourself with people like that in the music scene, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Because, I mean,
Well,
not that your coworkers wouldn't do it or something, but it's like, it's one of those things. I feel like there's a special bond you have with band members or with other musicians, and it's not something to be taken lightly. So it just
absolutely
makes my it warms my heart to know that you've found a place like that for you, just as I have found a place like that for me in the music scene. So,
well, I've been blessed. I've been around, like I said, between the guys in As For You and Norm and all the guys in Calous. I've been lucky. I've been lucky enough to have, like you said, you know, it's a support group. We're kind of each other's support group outside of our families. When we're as a group on stage or writing or whatever we're doing, we're our own little support group. And even when we're not writing, when things in life pop up, you know, we're always right there for each other. We always have been, and it's just been a blessing. You know, that's all I can say. I watch other bands tear each other apart, you know, and none of my bands have ever done anything like that. And so I feel lucky to be with that group of guys, you know?
Yeah, it almost is the luck of the draw too. 'Cause I mean, it is really sad to watch a band kind of implode on themselves. It's sad.
Especially a good, talented band, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, some of that might come from the fact that everyone's that talented and it's just a thing that happens, but I guess it is just the way it is, you know, and you know, so I guess if you like the band and you like the music, go support them, because you never know what's going to happen, you know, but it's, because not every band has the longevity, and I always used to just be like, why don't these bands just go on forever? And I mean, that's why, because sometimes, you know, things come up. And I get it, too. Like, in 10 years, people can change, and attitudes can change, and perceptions on what's going on, or even just your preference in music genres can change. And you can be like, well, I'm kind of burned out on playing this style. I'm going to go play that style or whatever. So I never really...
That was kind of like when I was in the band with Brad, when I was in Bordeaux with him. It was kind of a southern almost country rock type of feel, and it was totally different from Calous and As For You. And I was playing bass too, so I wasn't even playing guitar. And so that was a fun little departure from what I'd been doing. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's beneficial too. There's so many people that only stick with one type of music, and that was something I found out was like going out and playing. Whether I'm playing like jam nights up in Barnum with Clint Riedel, or if I'm playing like new country stuff with Jesse Wilson, it's one of those things where it's like I'm starting to learn things I never would have learned if I had just stuck with metal or punk, you know. And
I was like that for quite a while. It was like, if it wasn't heavy, then I don't even want to hear it.
me too. Know? I think some of that might also lend itself to why we are the way we are. We start to like maybe realize the mistake we made, you know, where it's like, I just wrote this music off as not good for so long. Right. And then all of a sudden when I was just like, I'm going to try doing what they're doing. It's like, you know, especially with like the country stuff, it's like, man, some of these guys can shred like crazy, you know, and chicken pick like nuts. And I can't do any of that stuff on, you know.
Vince Gill is just a monster on guitar.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Vince Gill can... Man, just incredible. Watching that guy play is amazing. But you know what? Maybe even 10 years ago, I'd have been like, Vince Gill, whatever. Some country dude, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, maybe it's just the evolution. We've been at it at least I've been at it for so long, and that I don't think like that anymore. I love all kinds of music, whether it's country, whether it's jazz. I love smooth jazz. I love listening to these jazz guitar players play, and I'm like, man, you know, it just opens up new doors, new windows, doors that I didn't want to go through when I was younger, because I was so focused on what we were doing at the time. Mm-hmm. Especially when we were, you know, doing the Jägermeister tours and stuff, and that was just our focus at the time. And I didn't want to hear nothing else. I didn't want to be exposed to anything else. I was just laser focused on what we were doing at the time. And but I'm not like that now. I love all kinds of stuff, all different types of... If it's good music, it's good music.
Yeah. I think something also has to be said about going to see it live, where you're like, these guys are making this music right now in front of me. And that's one of those things where you're like, holy cow. I mean, if you hear
Right.
if you hear it in, if you hear it on the radio or whatever, it's just kind of like, it's neat, whatever. But then when you go see it live, you're like, whoa, they're actually doing it, like right in front of you. It's like having
It's
somebody
hold
live paint in front of you.
Yeah, it's a whole different vibe. It's you get the whole energy of a live show and the crowd and just the whole energy, the excitement of everything. It's amazing. It's addictive.
Yeah,
It's very addictive, especially when you're the one on stage playing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
It's the best feeling in the world, man.
Oh man. Oh, you and I have cleared an hour here already. A super easy, nice conversation, dude. I
feel like we just started.
Yeah, I almost feel bad that we haven't talked this much beforehand, and that seems to be a common thing. I always talk to people. I'm like, this is going to be nerve wracking. I've never met Harold before, and then it's like, he's a cool guy, So you start to realize everybody's a real, actual person, and
I'm harmless.
Well, is there anything I didn't mention here that we should have mentioned in the podcast? I think I'm looking at my notes. I think we got most of what I wrote down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm busy. We're busy recording. Both bands we're recording, and we're still in the studio.
Nice.
We're pumping them out. Calous has about 7 or 8 new tunes. We're recording all of them right now. As for you, still recording. We got 4 done. We recorded up at Arc Studios up in Ames, and so shout out to Dennis, the owner of up there at Arc Studios, and Dan, who was our engineer, and he helped produce these last 4 songs we just released. So, but yeah, so we're just staying busy, man. We got a whole new spark going, and we're just off to the races. That's all I can say. Here we come.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stoked to know that you're still out there making music, and that you guys didn't just sit on your hands for the last year. You got to do something. So, Harold, it's been awesome sitting down talking with you. If anybody's looking for any of Harold's music, it's going to be in the description section. So scroll down below, click on it, give it a listen, give the like on the Facebook and the poke and the subscribe and all those goodies, because believe it or not, they help out. They make us feel good when somebody new likes the page, So check out all of Harold's stuff down below.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to come on the show. I appreciate that very much,
dude. Absolutely, it's been wonderful having you. It's nice to know that there's people that think like I do and willing to support, and it's one of those things from the onset. Like we said, the metal guys, they might seem kind of gruff, but then you find out these are some of the most supportive people out there. Actually, they're actually really nice people. So. Stick with me, Harold. I'm gonna end the recording here, but I'll talk to you after I end the recording. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, bet. Thank you.
What'd I tell you? Harold's such a cool guy. I mean, you can call it fate, you can call it dumb luck, you can call it whatever you want, but I am finding some of the coolest people in the music scene, and they're getting in touch with me. I'm getting in touch with them. They're hopping on the podcast. I had a couple of people at a show this last weekend say, hey, I listened to a handful of your episodes, and they were really, really good. So, I mean, even that just, it warms my heart to know that people are listening to this and supporting one another. And speaking of supporting one another, you can scroll down below, find links for As For You and Calous down below, as well as Harold's personal YouTube channel that he talked about in the episode. That's going to have all sorts of videos from Calous and As For You and prior bands and other bands. So check that out. It's on his YouTube channel. Give him a subscribe if you like, and enjoy the tunes, man. Like I said, all the links are down below. Make sure you hit follow, hit like, hit subscribe. Check them out. If you guys are interested in seeing a live show and you're okay, you feel okay with the social distancing and the safety and wearing a mask or whatever you guys prefer to do, there is a show. As For You is playing at Lefty's Saturday, May 1st, and that's this year. So, I mean, it's still a little over a month, maybe about a month and a half away, but it's an all-ages show, 5 to 9. It's $8 at the door. As For You will be there with Section Hate and Further South, so check that out. It's going to be a good show. I'm stoked. If I got the time off, I'm going. I've been picking up a lot of weird bookings lately to play shows myself and accompany other musicians, so my calendar's filling up a little bit, so I in tune with that, I have to say thanks to Harold for taking out time out of his day to come talk with me. We set up an interview, and then I realized I had something going on, and then we set up another date, and I had something going on that day, and then we were going to do it the day before we actually did it, and it didn't work out because I had something going on, so then we were going to do it on this day. You get the picture. He worked with me relentlessly to get this done, and I have to tip my cap to him. Thank you very much, Harold, for doing this. Like I said, one of the good guys out there in the music scene, and hey, if you're one of the good guys, hit me up. I want to talk to you too. I love talking to people about music and what they have going on. These interviews fly by. I mean, like I said, I could have probably sat down and talked to Harold all day long if we had the time, but we don't. So I just got to say I appreciate it. Harold, thank you guys very much. Check his music out and appreciate it. Speaking of other things going on in the music scene, if you guys are looking for anything Audible Farm, you can go to shop.audiblefarm.com and you can find Audible Farm goodies. There is a new piece of merch in there, but it is already almost sold out. Why? Because I didn't order very many. So if you guys are looking for that, check it out. It's shop.audiblefarm.com. We are also on YouTube. We are on everywhere you listen to podcasts. There are also video clips on YouTube. Full videos of the podcast are available on Patreon, patreon.com/audiblefarm. Those will cost money, but it's only $1 a month. That means you get 4 episodes in a month. It only costs you $1. It's $12 a year. That's less than 1 month of Netflix, and you get 50 plus episodes of the Audible Farm podcast. If spending money to support is not your kind of thing, you can still support in a free fashion. All you have to do is like the page, share the page, let somebody know about it. Maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's always a good thing you can do to help people out. So if you guys are interested in supporting the cause, check that out. That's always another way you can do it. You don't always have to spend money, and I don't really expect anyone to spend money. Why? Because these are free podcast episodes. If you're listening to the intro and outro, I know for a fact you're listening to the free episode, and I just got to say thank you guys very much for supporting it just by listening. That's the absolute least you can do, and next in line would be support the musicians that are on the podcast. This isn't really about me promoting what I have going on. It's about me helping others promote what they have going on and helping them tell a little bit of their story while we sit down here. So I got to say thanks to all the musicians I've had on, and especially Harold this week. Like I said, it wasn't easy getting me wrangled into a time that would work for him, but we got it done, and it just touches my heart. Warms my heart that people will take time out of their day to sit down and talk with me. I get that I'm doing a little promotion for them, but it's a very big deal to me. So thank you guys very much, every guest I've ever had, and the future guests that I will have. So if you guys are looking for more episodes, maybe scroll back. I bet if you know Harold, you probably know a handful of other people I've sat down with over the last 2+ years. And if you don't know anybody that's been on there and you want to be on here, hit me up. I'm doing my best to go back in time and talk to all the people that I maybe overlooked over the course of the last year when getting together was not quite an option. And some people aren't comfortable or don't know how to use Skype, so it makes doing interviews difficult if I don't necessarily have an easy time getting to where they're at to talk to them face to face. So if you guys are looking to chat with me, Skype is probably the easiest way as of right now, and that is how I'm doing a lot of the podcasts. Unless people are local to me and they're okay with sitting down in a room with me, that's the only other way I'm willing to do it. Traveling to do the podcast is gas is getting expensive, so it's getting a little tough to do that. So otherwise, hit me up. I'm more than willing to Skype with people. I still have a few people I need to hit up. I got some good guests coming up, so check those out. It's coming up in the next week. There's new episodes every Thursday. There's video clips on the YouTube channel every Saturday. And like I said, those Patreon pages will have the full video there. That's some of my funnest stuff. There's a few people that do the subscription to that, and I have to say thank you guys very much for subscribing to my podcast over Patreon. But like I said, if you don't want to spend any money, you don't have to. This is a free podcast. Just let somebody know you listen to it and say, hey, I heard this guy was on here and I think you might like it. Check it out. And that's all it really takes, just a little bit of support. And you can even do that with bands. You can do that with your buddy's favorite businesses. It doesn't matter. I mean, that kind of support goes a long ways. You don't always have to spend money to support somebody. So thank you guys for listening. I will be back next week with another guest, and it's going to be great. Peace.